Hi, I'm Martin McGrath from Financial Edge Group. We're financial planners who specialise in retirement planning, and often that involves a lot of work around inheritances. So I want to talk to you today about some of our best tips that we help when we sit down with people who have recently received an inheritance. So it might be the case that we know one is coming, we found out that someone in our family has passed away, and this may be new news to us. What do we do with this money? How much is it? What does it all kind of mean? So our first initial advice is pause and take your time. Don't commit to anything. Fortunately, the legal framework means it does take a little while, so often we might know what we're getting well before we get it, and that's the perfect time to understand your options. Well, what could we do with this money? What are the options? How much is it going to be? Do we pay this debt down? Do we put money here? Take that time and understand those options. There's plenty of options, and that's what we help people kind of talk through. We could do some of this, we could do some of this. Here's the benefits of this, here's the cons of that. So I recommend taking the time to understand what those options are. And I'll talk about a few of those today in this video. Another big thing that I see people don't always get correctly is the tax consequences of inheritances. Different inheritances come with different tax consequences. Are we getting cash? Are we getting shares? Is there a property? Is the property being sold before it comes to us? Was it previously the home? Was it investment? What does all that kind of mean? Good news is we're also chartered accountants and tax agents, so we understand that tax implications of all of it. Because I've seen people make mistakes where they receive a whole bunch of shares, they sell them, and then they end up paying the tax bill much later, not being aware of that. There are some strategies and ways that we can reduce that tax bill, spread it out, or at least understand what that looks like before we jump in and make that decision. So that's the other bit, is definitely understand the tax consequences of any decisions on these assets that we might be receiving. In terms of some of the most common things that we help people make sure they get sorted, usually at the top of the list is, do we have some debt to eliminate? If that's debt on home, debt on investments, that's usually a no-brainer to kind of consider that option, and usually goes towards the top of the list. Receive some money, let's pay the home loan off, let's pay it down, depending on the size of the money and your current situation. That's definitely towards the top of the list. The next thing then is, well, do we invest some of this money? If there's money left over, or if we've already got some shares, do we leave those invested? Whose name do they go in? Do they go in my name just because I got the inheritance? Do I look at who my partner or spouse is, or kids are, or family? Whose name should they go in? And that also might depend on your situation, but definitely an option to consider. Do we want to leave a couple $100,000 in the bank not earning much in interest? Not really, or not for a long period of time. Depending on your age, do we look at super? Can we put some money from inheritance into super? Short answer is yes. There's some limits, there's some ways to do it more efficiently than others, potentially some tax to be saved, but yes, super definitely needs to be as part of this discussion. If we're over the age of 50 generally, and over the age of 60, it's usually pretty high up the priority list, probably second after debt. And there's some pretty efficient ways to put that money into super that can reduce or eliminate some of that tax that I spoke about before. But again, depends on your situation and where you're at. But often, commonly, part of that inheritance sets ourselves up for retirement during that process. What I always recommend, and always make sure we put money aside for, is something meaningful. We've received inheritance usually from a loved one. Is it something that we put aside for the kids or the grandkids in memory of that? Is it a trip we take because of that? Is it some money we donate or put towards something in that space? I always make sure that's on the list, so there's a connection with this money. It's not just a lump sum, it's different to a lotto win or something like that. Yes, we want to focus on the financial side of things, but we always make sure funds are set aside for that as well. Hopefully that kind of gives you a bit of an understanding of what some of those options look like. What's the best for you? Well, it depends. We've got a few different case studies on our website you can check out and have a look at. Everyone's situation is different. Want to, more than happy to sit down, have a complimentary meeting to talk you through some of those options, and if relevant, give you advice on what we think is in your best interest to maximize this position that you're in. Hopefully that all makes sense. Feel free to reach out to us at financialedgegroup.com.au.